Welcome to the SecureWorld Sessions. We are a brand new cybersecurity podcast that's all about access. Access to people and ideas that impact your cybersecurity career and help you secure your organization. Hi, my name is Bruce Sussman, and I'm Director of Content at SecureWorld and also your podcast host. And in today's session, we are opening the file on business email compromise with one of the top U.S. investigators of this crime.
These criminal organizations, and that's truly what they are. They're these large organizations where they run just like a business. They're very successful, they're very good at what they do, and they run just like an actual business. So they have CEOs, they have financial officers, they have bankers.
So much for the idea that most hackers are sitting in their mom's basement pounding away on their keyboard and crunching on snacks like maybe some hot Cheetos. And today's featured interview is with Chris McMahon, and he is a special agent with the U.S. Secret Service. He's a part of the Global Investigative Operations Center, where he specializes in investigating business email compromise schemes and other related crimes, and his insights are really rich. Now, we also have some recent research from Trend Micro later in the show, and Trend Micro is our exclusive podcast partner. Well, let's start, though, with our featured interview. I talked with Special Agent McMahon at SecureWorld Denver just before his keynote at the two-day cybersecurity conference, and he explained how BEC organizations now operate on an enterprise business model, how they develop the capability to move billions of dollars each year, and from your organization's perspective, how does business email compromise look? What are the attackers doing in successful attacks? You will hear some collaboration happening in the background of our interview. That's very typical for a SecureWorld conference, but let's go there now for the interview with Chris McMahon. And I know you're located at something called the Global Investigative Operations Center, which sounds really cool, by the way. But what exactly is that?
So the Secret Service has a complete cyber initiative where we have multiple groups or dedicated agents across our agency that sit in the Electronic Crimes Task Force in multiple offices, and which expand to our global offices overseas as well. And so we focus on major cyber crimes that impact the United States. And
give us some context on your exactly role. I mean, what is your focus?
Sure. My particular focus in the Global Investigations Operations Center is business email compromises, or BECs. And I use that term a little loose because within BECs it touches other crimes such as romance scams, as elder fraud, as the 419 scams. It all falls kind of under that umbrella because it tends to be the same actors, just fine-tuning their trade craft. And now the big push for them is business email compromises.
And by the way, what's the 419 scam? Because that's the only one I wasn't familiar with.
Sure. The 419 scam refers to, and this goes back a few years, but it refers to a lot of the Nigerian-type scams. They call them 419 scams because it was part of the legal code, but it focuses on the Nigerian scams.
Okay, makes sense. Mm-hmm, okay,
sure.
Great. All right. Now, I was thinking about the numbers that released in 2019. All of a sudden, we knew that $26 billion had been taken through BEC in 6 years. I mean, that is phenomenal. Were you surprised when you saw that number or not?
I was. I mean, if you think about it, $26 billion is a staggering amount of money. Now, granted, that's globally. However, $26 billion with a B, that number is just astronomical.
Yeah.
And it's surprising in a sense where bad actors can get their hands on that type of money, or at least attempt to get their hands on that type of money. But at the end of the day, they do work at this. This is what they do for a living, right? So they spend their time focusing on the vulnerable people. They focus on businesses where they can compromise them, or accounts where they can just launder the money. And so next year, that number is going to be even higher.
Wow.
So we're trying to really, grasp it and get our hands around it. and focus on, taking the bad actors down, which will help mitigate that number.
And I know for a long time we've had this idea of hackers being like a small business, kind of a loner in a basement. That's probably where that whole hoodie motif came from, right? But now I know that you talk about in your presentation here at SecureWorld the enterprise business model of cybercrime. Will you walk us through what that looks like and how it operates?
Sure. So as we've investigated these types of crimes and arrested people and been able to interview the bad actors, what we find is that these criminal organizations, and that's truly what they are. They're these large organizations where they run just like a business. They're very successful. They're very good at what they do, and they run just like an actual business. So they have CEOs, they have financial officers, they have bankers. So they have the CEO level where you're giving direction on what to do, and at the end of the day, they get a cut of the money that comes through.
So you're kind of the strategy person?
Yeah. So you're running the organization as a whole.
Wow.
Then under them, you'll have like an HR function where you're recruiting people, right? And you're managing the people that you're recruiting into the fraudulent world. And then you'll have your IT people who either develop the malware or they'll go out and buy malware and in the injections in order to infiltrate the computers or the systems that they're looking to do.
Wow, so they're finding the right technology to get the job done, whatever that looks like a normal IT person.
Mm-hmm. Either they're bringing those people into their organization as people, or they're having those people go out and buy the malware or the systems or whatever injection they're buying at the time in order to commit the crime. And then under that, you'll have runners, right? Or you'll have mules, where those people are the people that are actually passing the money. And so it's set up truly like an organization.
In a minute, Special Agent McMahon will help us follow the money. I mean, you can't just open an account and start shoving millions of dollars in there without looking suspicious. Or can you? We'll learn about that and more as our interview continues. Speaking of BEC attacks, it is one of many things that Trend Micro tracks, and the researchers there report detecting a 58% increase in BEC attempts on its customers in the first half of 2019 compared to the last half of 2018. So to help combat this, Trend Micro recently announced a partnership with Europol by supporting a BEC awareness campaign that's rolling out across 59 countries. Trend Micro also offers these tips to battle BEC. Number 1, implement two-factor verification, which requires the recipient to confirm with the requester using non-email verification processes. Number 2, implement employee training on how to identify BEC and phishing emails. And of course, phishing simulation is one tool you can use. I'll put a link in the show notes to the Phish Insight tool that you can try for free on the Trend Micro site. And number 3, implement advanced detection technology within your email security solutions that are designed to detect BEC, things like AI and machine learning, and also writing style analysis. This type of analysis tool uses AI to recognize that the writing style of a suspect's email does not match the style of, say, your CEO or your CDO or your CFO. Something to consider as these attacks become more sophisticated. And there you have it, today's Trend Micro Top 3. I'll place a link to these items in the show notes. Now, let's get back to our interview with Special Agent Chris McMahon of the U.S. Secret Service, one of the nation's key point people when it comes to investigating major cases of business email compromise. When we spoke at SecureWorld Denver, I asked him to help us follow the money. The money in a particular scenario. And here it is. Your organization has fallen for the social engineering that is involved in a BEC attack, and you've sent funds unknowingly to hackers. Then what? Here is his answer.
actually getting a hold of the money out of a company is not the first step.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So initially they have to have a place for that money to go, and it's not going to be their own personal account right off. And so they've already built a network of, we call them mules, right? It could be witting or unwitting victims, we'll say, who have set up bank accounts or are going to use their own personal bank accounts in order to receive the money. And so once they have those people online, then they'll go ahead and commit the BEC. The company will send the money to the victim, right? Whether it's a romance victim or an elder fraud victim, and then they'll be given instructions on sending the money to the next step. Usually it's a second mule, or it might be a small level director within the organization. And from there, typically you see it make at least one, if not two, hops in the United States, and then from there you typically see it go overseas. Not all the time, but the majority of the time that's what happens.
And so when you're saying it makes hops in the United States, I mean, are these people who've opened bank accounts with fraudulent identities, or how are they setting up an account that can handle, in some cases, millions of dollars?
Most of the mules that we see aren't necessarily using fraudulent docs.
Okay.
But they're given instructions on how to open accounts and how to talk to the bank about, hey, I'm going to accept, this amount of money, or I need it to hold $1 million or whatever it happens to be. And from there, they're given instructions on, once they've received the money, and that happens within a day or two, the money's sent out. So the money doesn't sit in their account very long. The victims are given instructions, and they're given reasons why that have nothing to do with the crime. Typically, they're very personal. When it's a romance victim, I need the money for such and such a reason, and then money's sent out.
Wow. And when that money goes overseas, do we know where it's going? I mean, are there certain countries that are hotbeds that you can hear that sucking sound from the United States to these other countries, or what's going on?
There are. We do see that transition from time to time. Years ago, it used to be that it was going to Africa, going to Nigeria, and we've seen that transition from Nigeria because our banking systems have caught on to the fact that a lot of fraudulent money was going there. So they've amended their practices to red flag money going there. They don't necessarily allow wires to go there all the time anymore. And so because of that, the fraudsters have had to move and shift their how they operate, right? How they send the money. So we do still see it go to Africa. It may make a hop to one of several countries before it gets to Africa, because sometimes it's a little bit easier for other countries to send money there. But ultimately, we do see a lot of majority of the money funds end up in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Can you walk us through or share a story of an actual BEC case or CEO fraud or something that you've seen, knowing that security people, listen to this podcast? Just kind of give us an idea of what this crime actually looks like from the organization or company end of things.
Sure, and within the company, it happens a couple different ways potentially.
Okay.
So, I could give you a couple examples.
Great.
One being, we mentioned earlier that the real estate industry gets hit frequently with BEC fraud, and so the bad actors are sitting on, say, a title company or a real estate agent's email address, and they're watching the emails come through. They set up forwarding rules, so they're being forwarded all the emails, paying attention to the important ones. And so say you're buying a house and you have a closing at the end of the week. Well, the bad actor will then send an email that looks legitimate from the title company to the buyer, and which will say, "Hey, go ahead and wire your money to this account so you don't hold up closing on Friday." Well, to the buyer, it makes sense because they don't want to hold up closing on Friday, and it looks like it's coming from the title company. So everything looks legitimate. However, typically the bank account for the wire instructions is a bank account that the bad actor has set up already.
Okay, right.
Other instances would be invoicing. So we've seen this in multiple, with small municipalities and towns and cities across the country, where a contractor may be doing work for a town or a school, and the bad actor is sitting on that email address, and when it's time to do the invoice, they'll go ahead and create the invoice that looks legitimate, but the bad actor's account information is on that invoice. And so it happens that quickly.
Right.
Because the bad actors are sitting on that email address, they're watching and continually watching those emails come back and forth, so they know exactly when to send the fraudulent email. so it doesn't look like it's out of place.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, two things come to mind hearing you describe these crimes, because I remember writing a story about a Catholic church that had a major construction project going on, and they heard from their construction company that said, you've been paying on time up until now, but you've missed 2 payments worth $1.7 million. Is everything okay? I mean, do you need more time? What's happening? And, of course, they had received instructions, new wiring instructions.
Of course.
And everything looked legitimate. And like you say, it was only information the construction company would know, because it was the exact payment amount on the exact date, and that money was gone.
And I bet that the invoice that they were receiving looked just like every other invoice they processed, just with a different bank account.
Yep.
So it does happen. And what's interesting about that from a law enforcement perspective is, by the time they made the payment, or by the time they were notified that they were missing payments, they're already 30 or 60 days behind.
Wow.
And so from a law enforcement perspective, that can be really difficult to conduct the investigation, because the money's already made its 2 hops and potentially overseas already, or it's been withdrawn, which makes it that much more difficult to track. So the fact that it doesn't get reported right away, or they don't even know that it's happening to them, which means it can't get reported right away, already makes us behind as part of the investigation. So typically, we're able to recover maybe not all, but a significant portion of the funds within a certain amount of time. But typically by 72 hours, it's really, really hard to recover any of that money.
So you need to report it right away.
Yeah, as soon as you find out, it's recommended that you report. And you can report to any of the federal agencies, your local police. FBI has the ic3.gov, which is a good reporting website. Unfortunately, what happens often is that companies or people don't report it, and they may be the missing link to the puzzle of our investigation that we've been conducting over the past of months or years, or however long the investigation has been going on. So if we don't have the information, we can't investigate it. So we always like to get that piece of the investigation.
Wow, so you could actually help break open one of these enterprise operations with the evidence you share, so to speak. Okay, sure. And you don't come in, by the way, like you see sometimes on TV, you're not going to come in and confiscate everybody's servers, right, or anything like that?
No. We only look for the information that is pertinent to the crime that's been committed.
Okay,
and obviously legal process plays a role in that. So
right,
we're not coming in and taking people's servers.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I think Chris, that SecureWorld's headquarters is Portland, Oregon, and I recently saw a story of a guy named Aaron Cole in the Portland area. He got a call from his title company person, and she said, "Hey, it's time to transfer your down payment money of $123,000." And he was driving at the time, and he said, "Oh, that's great, because I already transferred it last week, so we're good." And minutes later, she told him that money didn't come to us. And it was hackers like you have described here impersonating his title company. And he said even the name and phone number of the people he was working with at the title company were in the email. I mean, it looked completely legitimate. And this is how he describes the feeling. He says, imagine standing there with $120,000 in cash in your hands, and someone just comes up and walks away with it. That's what it was like. And that was their entire, life savings, their biggest nest egg that they had gone. Are you seeing people who are losing homes or things like that, or can't buy the next home because of this type of crime?
Absolutely. Like I said before, we discussed this earlier, that real estate is in the top 3 of BEC crime. And so people get stuck because a lot of times people are purchasing new homes, selling their former home, and there's that flux in the middle, maybe a day or two, right? And so they send, like you mentioned, they send their life savings, or a significant portion of their savings on the new home, and now it's gone. And so your title insurance or your insurance companies aren't necessarily going to cover that. And so if we can't recover it, part of the investigation, then now, we're almost out of luck. And so it's really unfortunate, because we see it happening to vets, we see it happening to elders, we see it happening to young people buying their first homes, and that's a it continues and continues. The more we dig into it, the more we see, which is really unfortunate. It's really sad.
Yeah, well, that makes me mad, actually. But
and $125,000. I mean, it's a significant amount of money.
Oh my gosh.
And it's really on the low end of what we tend to see, right? So 125 is to somebody it's their entire life, but we the investigations that we see are millions and millions.
My final question for Special Agent McMahon was about red flags and signs that cyber criminals may be in your system or a vendor's system and looking for the chance to commit BEC fraud against you. I can sum up his answer in 5 words: email forwarding rules and emotion. Now let's have him fill in the details.
A lot of what happens with these crimes is that the human nature, the human element of this is what takes over occasionally. So a lot of the red flags that we see in these email compromises are urgency, I'll be out of town, I'll be out of contact, send it, don't tell anybody type of information, or hey, can we take this offline? So with WhatsApp becoming more and more prevalent these days, or some of these secured apps where communication's encrypted, it's let's take this offline and email me directly or text me directly so nobody sees this because it's a surprise for the company. And so we see that growing and growing where they're taking it off the email systems and going direct with a person. And part of what organizations need to look at and be aware of is those types of red flags. Additionally, the CISOs and the IT networking guys and the CIOs of the company need to look at everybody's emails, right? Because that's where this is all housed. Right, this is where this crime comes from. So look at the email forwarding rules. We just investigated a case where it was a local government case, and they were infiltrated, and there were 136 email forwarding rules on one person's email.
Wow.
136.
Oh, man.
Unless it's some special circumstance, I don't think there should be 136 email forwarding rules on anybody's email.
Yes, exactly.
So those are the things that you need to look into. And the old, the old thought of, hey, change my password, then nobody can get in, that won't change it. Right? You can change your password all day long, but if those email forwarding rules are there, then those emails are still getting sent to the bad guy. And so you just need to pay attention to that stuff. Educate your workforce on red flag circumstances. Like I said, the urgency. Let's take this offline. I'm going to be out of town, but go ahead and send the wire today. They prey on that. They prey on that human element, and it works for them.
Clearly, it's working with $26 billion in global losses in 6 years. That kind of money ups the criminal motivation level. Wouldn't you say? It's like a business opportunity that hackers have trouble passing up. Well, in the show notes, I'm going to include a couple of helpful stories. One is on a BEC ring that got busted during the summer of 2019. Police around the world arrested hundreds of cyber criminals and money mules, including more than 70 in the United States. But the bust itself reveals a lot about how these operations unfold. Also, one of our SecureWorld writers did a story on romance scams and the known screen names being used to commit fraud against those looking for love. You'll want to take a look at those screen names and share them maybe with your employees. Let them know. Don't fall for it with these people. And I'll include a link to that article as well in the show notes. Now, here's a preview of our next episode. I'm interviewing a controversial figure in cybersecurity circles. Brian Krebs has even called him out for what he does and how he does it. His name is Vinny Troia. He's a pen tester, he's a cybercrime author, and he uses aliases to act like he's a hacker on the dark web. And he then communicates on a daily basis with well-known cyber criminals like the Dark Overlord. He's going to share his firsthand knowledge of these hackers and their world. You may not hear this information anywhere else, but you will hear it on the next episode of the SecureWorld Sessions. Last thing, will you do our team a quick favor? Will you please send us a note about any new insights you gained during this episode or another one of your favorite episodes? Our email is media@secureworldexpo.com. That's media@secureworldexpo.com. And also, we're a new cybersecurity podcast, as you've heard us talk about, and we appreciate any help spreading the word beyond the 17 regional cybersecurity conferences that we facilitate each year across North America. We are trying to share ideas and best practices with the largest security community possible, the global cybersecurity community. On behalf of our entire team, I'm Bruce Sussman, your host of the SecureWorld Sessions, and let's catch up again on the next episode.